This is the voice of freedom. We are not one voice. We are many. We are your voice. But we can only be effective if you use your voice. Your voice. This is the voice of freedom. We will not hide from the truth. We will ask the hard questions until we are sure we have the truth. Welcome to the voice of freedom, where your voice will never be silenced.
Well, evening, folks. How you going? Yes, last night, connection issues. This thing was running absolutely red friggin' hot. The other piece of Telstra shit that we quite obviously push up occasionally is plugged in over here. The battery, on the other hand, is right there. So it's working without a battery. That is the useful thing about them, I'm discovering. When they get really hot, you take the battery out and you can still use it. Probably would have been useful to know that the other day. How are you guys? Thank you, Bull Snut Oz. I like Carl voice. That's very nice of you. Evening all. Nice to see so many of you coming in for this evening's show. Last night, a few connection issues, no fun. But it did mean I was able to have a little bit of a glance around at some of the things that have been said over the last couple of days, over the last couple of shows. And I've got a couple of things to put up. Mark Lee said it was all the religious leaders that staked Jesus because he interfered with the money-making rackets, and that is pretty much correct. That's what was going on back in the day with Jesus, and it was, in fact, the religious leaders of the day who persecuted him. This is from Meg's F. Funny, Trump's executive order was written and passed September 12, 2018, 17 years and 1 day after 9/11. There is that number again. Interesting pickup, Meg. Very interesting pickup indeed. And this from Neville. G'day, Carl. Thanks for the show. I was shopping, so I had to watch afterwards. Mate, you run your road show. Best generator. Oh, that's right, because we were talking about generators and I was looking for a bit of help. So, yes, I need an inverter, preferably a pure sine inverter, and that way I will avoid the spikes. Thank you very much, Neville, for that bit of advice. Interesting sign went up in front of a Sunshine Coast doctor's surgery, sometime in the last few days. There you go. Due to COVID-19 pandemic, the body corporate of the Sunshine Coast Surgical and Specialist Centre as a medical facility requests all unvaccinated persons entering the building to wear a mask for the protection of the sick, elderly and the vulnerable persons in the community who attend that facility, who are still obviously catching COVID even after 3 jabs, lining up for the 4th and possibly the 5th now. We appreciate your rights to choose whether you're vaccinated or not, but we have a duty of care to the community. Gee, they only remember that duty of care statement when it suits them, don't they? Please cooperate with the request to keep everyone safe who utilises the facility. What they haven't put up there is P.S. We will call the police if you start screwing us around. And somebody sent me this. This is an awesome flag. I'm just trying to figure out if it's a real flag, a made-up flag. It certainly looks real enough. I'm just trying to think what it would mean. Interesting times. Flags mean things, folks. I did see a whole heap of flags in Tasmania while driving around, particularly from Launceston down to Hobart, and then from Hobart out to Port Arthur. A lot of folks got their own flags there, and very cool indeed. Some of them in the UN colours, which are... I'd be rethinking any flag design if you're using UN colours, folks. That's just my thoughts on the matter. But the bloke who's coming on tonight's show might have a few thoughts on that matter too. God knows he's got a few thoughts on everything else. So I'm very excited to have him on tonight's show. I've seen him on a few other things recently, including a chat with Ricardo not all that long ago. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to welcome to tonight's show a man who currently sits very nicely tied up along the Brisbane River. Would you please put your hands together and welcome John Wilson to the show. How are you, my friend?
Good evening, Carl. Good to be with you. And I mean, I'm a pretty obnoxious sort of person. I don't get a lot of invites to talk publicly. So thanks for the invite.
Well, we'll see how long we last, mate. So we are running on 2 channels that won't block you for anything you're saying, but we're also running on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 others that will. We'll see how we go. Hey. Mate, you have been very outspoken. When we spoke yesterday, you were telling me you're part of a group that Well, you don't call yourself truthers. You are researchers, is what you are. So maybe for folks who aren't familiar with exactly who you are, could you begin with a bit of an outline of who you are, where you come from, and tell us about this group you're part of and what the research consists of?
Well, look, I'm not part of any group. I'm not part of any political party. I'll never ask for any donations. I'm not interested in selling you any merchandise. I'm not looking for any political position, any job, nothing. I live on a boat, and I love my life when I did have a life on a boat, and that's what I want to go back to. But like many other Australians, I'm involved in trying to do two things. One is uncover what's going on, and the other is to bring that information to the awareness of the general public of Australia, so that they may take some actions. Now, over in recent years, since I've been doing this full time, I've ended up hanging out with a whole bunch of other researchers, and they come from all sorts of backgrounds, mums and dads and tradies, and some of them academic and military and policing and so on. And what we do is we build off the back of each other's research, and we've gotten pretty good at it. I'm not a really smart person, and never claimed to be a terribly smart person, but I hang out with some pretty smart cookies, and building off the back of their research, trying to put together the truth, trying to put together the real information, and then trying to work out what's unfolding, applying it and what's unfolding. Now, me personally, my background, old trade union guy, ex-communist, used to run the unions down in Canberra, president of Trades Hall Council, ex-secretary of the CFMEU, and I've done other stuff as well. My father's a waterside worker, life member of the MUA, my brother firefighter, life member of the Firefighters Union. So I come from a left wing, trade union sort of commo background, but now am no friend of the Communist Party or any of their apparatchiks or anything like that. Now I'm committed to putting them back on a leash and having them dealt with in due course. And now I'm committed to maintaining Australia's freedom, and work to that end. So, a bit about me.
So, what you call research, others might refer to as rabbit hole dwelling or diving.
Yeah.
Is that a fair assumption? I didn't.
Some of it is.
I didn't like the idea of being called a conspiracy theorist. I rephrased it and renamed myself a conspiracy analyst, because that's what I was doing. I went in with no bias, and that's how I got sucked into so many rabbit holes. I went in with no preconceived bias. Do you find that's something that your group exhibits a lot of?
Oh yeah, look, part of it's going down some of these conspiracy rabbit holes and checking them out, but a lot of other large part of it is searching databases, government databases, searching patents and things like that, gathering up flight records on who was on what plane that went to Jeffrey Epstein's island. I mean, none of that stuff is conspiracy rabbit hole stuff. It's record keeping. It's good record keeping, So, half of our work, we go down the hole, and but a large other part of it is actually just doing good, basic journalistic type of work.
Yeah. Well, so sometimes I've found that going down the rabbit hole is just the beginning. You find the end of the thread there, and you might find a few bits of the story, but you don't come out and talk about it, because you essentially want to be able to confirm that from other independent sources. That's the way that I try to do it, at any rate, before I start talking about stuff. And I think that's sort of what you're saying too. You will find a string down a rabbit hole, but then you'll go and look up the paperwork associated with that, or where that paperwork might actually be held and kept. And God knows they've buried so much paperwork, because governments and these bastards in the cabal particularly love to tell us what they're doing. So they write it down, but they don't put headlines saying, we're going to poison you all and kill you all. They put it in, beautiful flowery language and hide it, 3 sentences down in the 42nd paragraph of the 72nd chapter of a tome written about great things we're going to do for Australia. That's sort of what we're fighting against. But you guys are able to find that paperwork. That's amazing work that you do, and you should be congratulated. Thank you very much for putting so much time into it.
You've heard the mantra, follow the money.
Yeah.
Well, try it sometimes, and you'll be absolutely blown away where it will take you. I'm only giving you an example, but we have within our network of friends and researchers, we have people that do nothing else but follow the money, and you'd be surprised about what that will reveal, that alone. So, sometimes it's a tough gig. I mean, I've had a couple of Christian friends that went into some real life researching, in Northern California. It involved child trafficking and that, and they came out very damaged people, very damaged. The whole experience and learning what they found out really knocked the shit out of them. It's
So, John, I saw a video of yours the other day in another interview, and you were speaking with great gusto and great strength and great knowledge about what's going on at the moment and why the normies aren't waking up, and why they should be waking up, and the reasons why some people are saying we're not seeing anything. You and I would argue that we're seeing many, many things happening. Where do we start? Military occupancy. Now, military occupancy sounds like, well, the military have come to town and they've taken up the football ground, which in some cases is actually true. But military occupancy, particularly in the US and under US constitutional law, has some very great meaning. Do you want to elaborate a little further on, defining military occupancy for our viewers?
Look, it's a difficult one, because of people's, stages of learnings to sort of where do you start with this stuff?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. I tend to look at it from, how I would embrace it and check it out. This is my thinking. It's not everyone's thinking, right? And I'm happy to admit that, right?
Yep.
The question of the military playing a role, I look at is it necessary, right? Okay. In Australia or anywhere else, is it necessary, right? Why should they play a role? You know what I mean? Why? I look at, is there an opportunity for them to play a role? And then finally, what would be the steps that would need to be taken for them to roll out, a role, and to intervene, to play an interventionist role. Okay, so I look at it from a few different angles. Now, in terms of is it necessary? Let's have a just chat about that. I don't believe there's we have any other options in dealing with the systemic corruption and the total infiltration of all of Australia's institutions, bar none. All of them are being controlled by those who take secret oaths and have loyalties not to Australia but overseas, right? Overseas forces and secret clubs that they're part of. We're unable to vote anything out. We're unable to change anything with our vote through massive voter fraud. We're unable to use the court system because the court system is owned by these very same people, but also the court system is utterly rotten to the core and compromised. We're unable to get any crimes of this nature investigated by the law enforcement because they're owned by the same secret societies and same, sworn oaths that they make, and they protect all of this fraudulent nonsense. So there's nowhere else for us to go except for a military intervention here in Australia, the same as in New Zealand, the same as in Canada, where all of us have got voter fraud. All of us have got absolute globalist tyrants in charge. All of us have got all of our institutions infiltrated and owned by secret societies, Freemasons, Skull and Bones, and Zionism, and all sorts of shit. We got nowhere else to go. Now, can the military play a role? Yes, they can. And if I was a military planning person, right, the thing that stands out to me, I mean, the other things that stand out to these experts, I'm an old trade union commo, right? So, from how I see it, if you wanted to wrong foot all of these Freemasons and Zionists and, Vatican operatives, right, and everything that hangs off that, what you would do is you would change the operating theatre of war. And what do I mean by that? Well, what you would do is you would suppress or choke all their laws, which is the laws that we've been taught: maritime law or admiralty law, contracts law, administrative law. All of those laws which they run all of their institutions and apply them against us, weaponize them against us, you would suppress all of that with military law, martial law, because martial law takes supremacy over the top of all of these other fabricated legal situations, right? So martial law rules on supreme. You would wrong foot all of their institutions.
Can I just interrupt for 1 second? Martial law, I agree, is supreme over everything. But we've been led to believe that our military and many others around the world have been corrupted at various levels, from the very highest all the way down. That obviously is being cleaned out. The people of Australia wouldn't understand how military law could be enacted. Do you understand? And I know this is going to get us into an interesting conversation about which country Australia actually is part of at the moment. But military law enacted in Australia, how does that get started?
Well, I think we're to have it publicly released, right? Okay, is to go on to a war footing, to adopt a war posture, and I think that's exactly the pathway we're on now. We've seen all the Russia-Ukraine stuff. We've seen the China-Taiwan. We've seen missiles being fired by North Korea towards Japan. We've seen this build-up and whole narrative for the last year for a war footing, to the point where you've had the president of Russia and his, one of his head honcho spokesmen talking about a nuclear missile launch. And that was a threat. That was a direct threat. If the West pushed too far, that's what they could expect. Now, that's going to put us very soon on a war footing, which will be the next step into martial law, in my opinion. Now, there's also some arguments or some observations that we may already be in a quasi martial law situation as we already are.
Yeah, so I would be a believer.
There's a military presence here in Australia, which is steering the ship behind the scenes.
Yeah, I definitely believe that is the case. Now, last time I put a show to air, the night before last, John, I asked people around Australia who particularly lived in areas close to or around our major ports to let us know whether or not there'd been much military ship activity in those ports of late, if they'd taken any notice. So I can tell you that we've had a great deal of action at Townsville with large American, seems stupid to call them warships, but these ships contain everything you need to make a war. They bring everything from aircraft and helicopters to tanks to Marines to everything else. There have been two of those that have come into Townsville recently. Normally, they only ever see them once every couple of years when there's an exercise down here, and they might only see one of them. Well, these ones have been coming in and out and in and out and in and out. They're doing so at night as well at times, so that'll probably have something to do with the tides. But interestingly, in Newcastle and in Wollongong particularly, there are also reports of Navy vessels coming in at night and being gone again before the morning. They're offloading people, they're taking people on in large numbers. There is reports of 4 naval vessels in Port Phillip Bay in Victoria. They're not tied up, they're just somewhere out in the bay or just outside the heads, one of the two. And that would be monitoring, I suggest, shipping going out there. There's another one lying quietly somewhere down the bottom end of Botany Bay, also monitoring shipping coming in through there. Not too much happening in Freo, but a lot of smaller naval work happening off Swanbourne, which is where the SAS base is, or the military base up there. And they certainly have ability to tie up there, because the Chinese tied up frigates there while they were out searching for their apparently their lost citizens. I think it had more to do with 28 tons of gold that was on that MH370 flight more than anything else. So yeah, there is a lot of naval action. Of course, there is naval vessels in Darwin. There has been reports of naval vessels off Queensland, and 1 or 2 apparently have come to Brisbane, but I haven't seen any evidence of them. There was talk there was a submarine in, but they never announce subs when they come in, and they always park them in the hardest spot to get to unless you've got a boat. So I couldn't confirm that in any way, shape or form. What I can confirm, though, is a hotel/apartment chain group, which owns quite a number, like over 150 apartments in a certain city, have had to relocate guests that have booked there because a priority client has come through and has taken over everything in those apartments, every room in those apartments, and they are moving people in and out on a daily basis. That special client is the Australian government. Those people are military uniform wearing folks. They with Australian accents. And the interesting thing about it is that they're wearing blue camos. Now, in Australia, blue camos would signify you're working with the Air Force, I think. These blue camos are, I think, maybe possibly a slightly different blue, but are very, very similar, I believe, from the description. I haven't seen any photos yet, but the description of them is very similar to the US Navy's camo uniform. That sort of coincides a bit with some other stories I've had today, and we are waiting for confirmation of them with video or photos. And that is that Australian warships are pulling into ports flagged under the American flag. Now, if this is the case, one might think it's the Republic of America rather than the United States of America, the corporation. And something definitely is happening. There is people, a lot of people getting off those boats, and under cover of darkness, they are putting a lot of people on those boats as well. They're using these rooms as hotbeds, if you like, and it sounds like it's people who've been working for a week or two, and they're getting 2, 3, 4, 5 days off, and then they go back to work again. And as soon as that lot walks out the door, somebody's in to fill that room. So, and it's all military. priority everything from parking to bed space. So
What we've got this public narrative. We've got this public narrative, about a war footing and Ukraine and how we got to send bushmasters and all this sort of stuff, right? But underneath this public narrative, there is a lot of troop mobilisation, a lot of it, and it's been going on for a while now, a good while now. Now, we don't quite know. None of us we don't have any military intelligence. We're not, in that arena, right? But it's very easy to monitor, all of these troop actions and naval actions, etc., all around Australia. Something is going on. Something's going on. And it's not, Russia and Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine's around the other side of the planet. You know what I mean? We shouldn't be getting involved in that in any way, shape, or form. But yet we're jumping into all of this sort of stuff. And it's positioning us for a war footing. That's what it's doing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Ready for it. I'm staggered by the amount of money Australia is giving in weapons or weapons aid versus humanitarian aid. We're into the over $500 million worth of weapons aid we've given them so far, and that in part is made up of machinery that we've put on planes and shipped over there. But the rest of it is money that has been funneled into the Ukraine and then has been funneled back out again, I am starting to believe. And if folks aren't already aware of the FTX cryptocurrency crash and how FTX was responsible for returning Ukrainian money to cryptocurrency, that Ukrainian money was actually American money that had been sent there by the Biden administration, converted into crypto because the Ukraine was a great investor in FTX. And then, of course, the young bloke running it, what was his name? Sam Bankman-Fried, was the second highest donor to the Democratic Party behind George Soros, donated hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, where do you think he got the money from? Straight from Ukraine. He didn't crypto it up. So I think there might be a connection.
A huge money laundering operation. Huge.
Yeah. And I think that Australia will be shown to be a part of that at some stage, given the huge amount of money we're sending them.
There'll be other things that will come out. I mean, Australia was the largest donor to the Clinton Foundation. And I think most of us and most of your audience would understand that the Clinton Foundation and the Clinton Global Initiative were very dodgy, very, very dodgy. And Julia Gillard and others, gave heaps of money away. Look, we can also talk about, $500 million that were given to some bodgy Great Barrier Reef firm by Malcolm Turnbull that only had 3 employees and never asked for the money in the first place, but before he left office, just before he left office. They are spending our currency into oblivion. All of this currency is being spent into oblivion, and there will be a huge global crash of all of these currencies. None of this debt can get paid back, none of it. And they are spending it all like drunken cowboys, and we all know what's going on with it. It's being washed and handed back to them. I mean, there's book deals. I mean, look at all these clown politicians out there getting book deals. They sell 20 books and they get paid a couple of $1 million when they retire. All bullshit. That's all payola. I mean, there is, they are draining the existing currency now, spending it like drunken sailors, washing it, taking as much as they can, and basically they don't care. They know, the end of the cycle is here, and this currency is gone. The Australian dollar, the US dollar, British pound, all of them are being spent into oblivion.
Yep. Are you hearing through your network stories like Annette's reporting here, big black vehicles with covered rego plates accompanying personnel in a camp near Longford in Tasmania? I've actually heard stories like that of military encampments in very out-of-the-way places right around Australia. In fact, I think there's one on the Queensland-New South Wales border. And I'm told that there are a couple along the New South Wales Victorian border. So, are you hearing anything about those?
Snippets of it. I don't have any hard intel. It wouldn't surprise me if they are going to mobilise numbers of military to take over, say, law enforcement, to take over, crowd control or whatever the case may be. They would need to keep that low key. They would need to keep them out of the way, and having them tucked away in obscure campments would make sense. But I don't have any hard evidence.
So, what's your prediction, if you like, then for the next week or two? What do you think we're in for?
Look, I don't want to sort of get into making any predictions because I'm like everybody else. I'm trying to connect the dots and sort of find out and discover the truth. But look, this is what we sort of know, right? We know that on many fronts, the chaos that's out there is intensifying. Order out of chaos, right? The Freemasons mantra is order out of chaos. We know there's going to be a reset. It's not going to be the Klaus Schwab reset. It's not going to be his reset, but we know a reset is coming because of all the chaos, medical chaos, political chaos, corporate media chaos, military chaos, you name it. So there's chaos everywhere you go, and that is intensifying. That's intensifying. We know that Australia is joined at the hip with America. We know that. We know that the corporate Australia, right, is joined at the hip with America. We know we're registered, etc. So when America sneezes, we get pneumonia. It has big impacts here in Australia. We know that, right? Economically, we know that. We know that the existing fiat currency system is being spent into oblivion and that it hasn't got much life left in it. And we know there's going to be a new financial reset. These things are, pending. They're very close. I personally am an investor, gold, silver, and some cryptos. All of the talk in that neck of the woods is all about reset. So, in the next few weeks leading up to Christmas, I think you're going to see with the changes at Twitter with Elon Musk and in other releases, you're seeing a higher level of revelations. There's more and more intel coming out, more and more revelations about the crimes that are being committed and so on and so on. So expect that to increase. Expect the war footing to intensify. Again, they need justification if they're going to go public with martial law here in Australia, but also in America. They need justification for that. We already know from Derek Johnson's uploaded research, which is sterling work, that in a national security situation, a national emergency situation, the president has enormous powers with these presidential orders, these executive orders. And we know that the presidential executive orders were written to Congress. They were obligated to respond. There were times limits on that. They weren't responded to. And we know that those executive orders then triggered a military involvement, a military mobilization, a military response, because it's a national emergency. So if they are in that environment, London to a brick, Australia joined at the hip, goods and chattel of the USA Corporation, London to a brick. We are in there up to our eyeballs as well. Also bearing in mind that Australia, in my humble opinion, committed an act of war against the United States by Alexander Downer participating with
Yes.
MI5, MI6, and the full backing of Julia Bishop and Turnbull and all these other grubs, committed an act of war against the United States of America by trying to take out President Trump. He was an elected president. So Australia, man, we're up into all of this shit up to our ears. It's not some remote long no. So if the US is moving into this martial law setting, military taking and intervening and playing a big role, bet your ass it's going to happen here in Australia. We will follow suit. We will. They sneeze, we get pneumonia here.
So we would be covered under the executive order. We would be covered as essentially becoming the 51st American state. I know that Australians are going to like the idea of becoming, a part of America. Could this be watered down to becoming an American protectorate, at least in the short term, before a real republic can be discussed without the likes of Malcolm Turnbull interfering and trying to rig the whole thing?
Absolutely.
Do you think that's a possibility?
Look, we're in a transition, right? This is my assessment, okay? And you take this, with a grain of salt. But look, we're in a transition from the old to the new. What does John Wilson, what's he mean by that? Look, to win this war without a shot being fired, without anyone being killed, maimed or injured, okay, all right, in anger. The solution, in my view, is that all Australians lose total confidence in the existing Australian institutions. All of these structures, these Freemason Vatican structures, all of this Admiralty law, all of this contracts law, that the Australian people lose total confidence in any and all of it and turn their back on all of these institutions. At the same time they turn their back on these institutions, they voluntarily want to grab those opportunities that are going to be afforded to us all with our newfound freedoms, okay? Now that's a victory. That's a victory. Now, so that means we got to transition from the old to the new, right? We have 25 million Australians which are used to a Freemason system of government. You got me? Not just government, but courts, law enforcement, taxation departments, you name it. And we know that all of these structures, I mean, when you go and listen to, and I'm not promoting or supporting one over the other or any of that. I'm just trying to state an observation. But when you listen to Wayne Glue and Rod Cullerton and Mike Holt and all the rest of them, right? When you listen to all of these people and their body of research that they put up, all of these institutions are either illegal, unconstitutional, or a complete fraud, like the tax department, a complete fraud. There's no foundation for them. So we have 25 million people which are trained to use all of this infrastructure, Freemason infrastructure, when in fact, none of it has any basis in law. None of it's legal. I mean, this is one of the arguments I have within the freedom movement, right? Again, I'm an old commo. I've led big national campaigns against government. I have fought some big battles. You got me? So I'm no novice in any of this stuff, right? But the question I ask is this to the freedom movement, all of these celebrity freedom movement people, right? Which one is it? Which one is it? Do you want to repair, fix up, tinker with all of these institutions i.e. clean them up, get elected and clean them up, right? Okay. Or, and then, you know, and then let it continue. Or do you want to get rid of the lot of it? Get rid of the lot of it and rebuild Australia as a free nation, right? Now, on for the second one. I don't want to fix this rotten, corrupt, stinking infrastructure that's owned by secret societies up. I don't want to repair it. I don't want to make it honest. I want to get rid of all of it. All of it.
Mm-hmm.
That's John Wilson, right? But I've got all these other freedom fighters out here, right? Okay, that don't share that view. They all want to start a political party and get elected, and somehow they're going to fix things. All bullshit. Yeah. Or the other thing they do is ask for hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars in donations to do court challenges inside of a free Masonic court system that's rotten to the core. Doesn't matter what jurisdiction it is rotten to the core, and they're all compromised. They've all got film and footage of them rooting little kids. You got me?
Yeah.
That's how they get these jobs. So this whole freedom movement, direction and what they're saying is solutions and all that. I am telling you now, it's all fucking bullshit. It's bullshit. There's one solution, and that's a division of armed personnel led by a very good commander with lots of fucking guns, lots of them. Yep. Coming up in Australia and saying to all you police officers out there who are all on fucking drugs, 60% of them are taking chemical drugs, speed, crystal meth, bloody, you name it. Tony Abbott done a compulsory drug and urine test a few years ago when he was Prime Minister. We know this. It's a fact. It's a fact. These cops are drug fuck thugs, right?
Yep.
Okay. And they're in control of law and order. And then we got the judges who are all pedophiles and all compromised in dispensing justice. For Christ's sake, this is madness. It's madness. There's only one option here, and that's the military, and that's the military to work with and help with the full support of the Australian people, right, to clean this shit up. You can't vote them out. The voting system is rotted. It's corrupt. You watch this fucking dog, Daniel Andrews. You watch him. And by the way, another thing that's pissing me right off in public life with all these celebrities out there are these stinking fucking dick-swinging trannies. I'm sick of them. Look at Daniel Andrews' wife. I mean, I've looked at every photograph and every bit of foot. Mate, it's not a woman. What is the premiere of it? To put all this down to your Victorian listeners and tell me if I'm stupid and wrong. Lay it out for me if I'm being homophobic and all the rest of it. I'm a conservative old communist. But what is the premier of Victoria walking around in public, parading around a transvestite male, calling it his wife? What's going on? Yeah. Does anyone else think that's queer? I do. I think it's, what the hell's going on in Victoria? It's like Disneyland down there. But you watch. They won't vote him out. It'll be a rort. Another election rort. We're in deep shit in this country, brother. We're in deep shit. The cops are all druggos. They're all bent. The politicians are all compromised. The judges are rotten to the core, and we got no sovereignty. We can't vote them out. What a mess we are in. What a mess.
Yeah. There is only one way out. You're right. Military is the only way, and I actually believe that military effort has been underway for at least 6 years. Yes. It's been working in the background, and I know those of us, online watching here in Australia are thinking, God, hurry up. Well, think of the cognitive dissonance that we have here in Australia. Let's say there's 26 million people here. Let's say 5 to 7 million of them are awake to one point or another. The rest of them are in well, somewhere between totally unawake and just starting to peel their eyes open. I think the totally unawake number is probably closer to 10 or 11 million, and the whatever's left is what's peeling its eyes open. So we are a country of 26 million people. There are cities in America and in Europe, not even big cities, that have greater populations than we do nationally. Can you imagine the level of cognitive dissonance that they have in those areas, in Europe, in America? Not to mention, I think, not that education plays a large role in it, but in America particularly, their education system has been destabilized, and their judicial system has seen to it that there's been no male role models in their community because they've locked them up at every opportunity. And on their 3-strike rule, they never get out again after 3 parking fines. You know, it's a pretty bad thing that they've done to the, well, a lot of the states in America that are running that rule. Mate, should American rule come to Australia, there will be a lot of good things. I see some comments there before saying it's great, we'll get our guns back. Yes, I guess we would under the Second Amendment if we are covered by the American Constitution. Yes, we would get our guns back. But you might want to look at some of the other laws in America too, because we're going to get those. We won't get to pick and choose, or at least not in the short term. What you were saying earlier, I tend to agree with. The military occupancy will become a more public occupancy, but not for any huge length of time. I believe it'll only be for the period of time where they're enlightening the world as to what's going on, and then giving the world the options of what's next. And all of us are going to have to come up with a new way of governing, because, as you have rightly said, we are not going to elect these bastards back into power so that they can fuck us 6 ways from Sunday again. And we don't want anybody elected to these new positions who are there to come out. Like, I'd be very happy to see a middle income person elected to that and not see them come out a millionaire. Public service is just that, public service. Yes, you should be compensated for what you're doing. And yes, I'm sure representing the people is a hard job at times. But I'm equally as sure that the money that our current representatives are being paid is not anywhere close in line with the amount of work that the bastards are actually doing on our behalf. They're doing plenty of work on the cabal's behalf. They're not doing too much on behalf of the people. So I'm very hopeful that
I think the secret is, Carl, is this. Wherever we move to, right, after we clean out the parasites, after we clean out these Zionists, Khazarian mafia, after we clean out these Satanists, child traffickers, and all this bloody garbage, once we take the rubbish out, you got me, and bury it, right, and then we have a clean cupboard, okay? From there, the secret, I believe, is to make sure that no matter who is in government, right, they have no ability whatsoever, no jurisdiction, no reach, no ability to interfere in anyone's lives. That's the first thing. So even when you get a rat in there, they are limited in terms of the damage they can do. At the moment, right, we have absolute dead-head rats, idiots, scoundrels who are elected into parliament, and they have the ability to cause immense damage, immense interference, immense slavery and everything else to ordinary people. That can't be allowed anymore, right? So government itself has to be severely curtailed and limited. And you're right, we want people of service inside of these positions. And they're a rare commodity. There's not a lot of these people around. Australians go, Aussie, oi, and we go on how good we fucking are. Well, let me tell you, in the last 3-4 years, mate, I haven't been treated very well at all by lots of Aussie, oi, mate. I've been treated like shit. I've been treated like fucking shit. And there's a lot of Aussies out here, man. I'm telling you, like a lot of your audience out there, we're working our asses off trying to win their freedom and win their safety, right? And all they get in return, like me, and I get this with the audience, we just get shit tipped on us. And I'm fucking over these piss ants, right? I'm over them. You know,
Yeah, I hear you.
You know, we're risking everything, mate. Early days, we were risking our fucking lives, mate. They were going to kill us if we didn't win this war. You watch, right? Now, luckily, we are winning it, and luckily, you know, we're going to come out on top of all this, right? For the reset. But I'll tell you now, mate, it's no fucking thanks to a lot of Australians out there, mate, who, you know, the ones I want to give a big shout out to are the bloody women. The women in this war, mate, have been magnificent, far more than any of the blokes, mate. I'm an old trade union communist. I'm used to having big buffy blokes who can fight big, you know, 120, 130 kilos with a hard hat and a bloody and a crowbar. But in this war, those bludgers have done sweet FA, you know, apart from the lads in Melbourne who gave the CFMEU a big serve, John Setka. And I mean, you know, those lads and lasses down there were magnificent. But apart from then, it's been the women all around Australia. So all you women out there, you warrior princesses, you've won me, man. I love yous. I love yous.
Yep, they are doing an awesome job. A lot of comments here about bringing people together, and certainly we want to do that. There is a great movement, you know, behind us. The folks who are in, you know, slightly awake at least, are now falling right in line and getting into developing my places, which are springing up all over Australia, which is absolutely amazing. I'm not sure if you're familiar, John, but My Place is an initiative put together by Darren Bergwerf out of Victoria. And he started one in Frankston. And from there, he has now got, I think, 14, 15, might be more of them. If you want to check out where they're popping up, and they're popping up on a daily basis, you can go to myplaceaustralia.org.
I'm
myplaceaustralia.org.
not familiar with them. Them. But I will check them out after this.
I can tell you, John, you're going to become very familiar with them, because I'll take you to a few.
Look, can I speak to bringing people together? Can I speak to that point? Because you've raised a really critical point. Okay, look. We are inside of the freedom movement, right? We have seen lots of factions develop. Right, lots of different factions develop. We've seen a lot of celebrity, and I use that very deliberately, a lot of these celebrity freedom movement people, right, who've got big public profiles out there, right, and they attract a lot of this following, right, okay? Now, I just say this. Earlier, I raised this question. I said, look, which is it? What do we want here? Do we want to fix, repair all of this utterly corrupt and rotten Freemasonic, system of government, system of justice, system of law enforcement, system of taxation, system of health, so-called public health, etc.? Do we want to try and fix that, or do we want to get rid of all of it, right, and rebuild all of it, right, as a free nation, as a free country, right? Remember how I raised that issue? It's a fundamental issue. But let me tell you this. Look, we don't need for all of the freedom fighters in Australia to all be part of the one structure, right? We just don't, right? We don't need them to all belong to this faction or to Australia One or to TAP or whatever it may be. Right, we don't. What we need, right, what we need is a singularity in terms of a sense of purpose, right? All of us need to know and be committed to the the one set of goals, what's our purpose? What are we doing? What are we fighting the war for? You understand me? And that's not happening. We've got some people that want to fix this Freemason garbage. We've got people like me that want to get rid of it and replace it with a newly built set of infrastructure by free people, etc., etc. So you've got huge differences in terms of, what we want and what our, because there's no single sense of purpose, no agreement, and that is entrenched. That is entrenched. You got me. We've got some who are saying, "Oh, let's start a new, Great Australia Party or whatever they want to do," and then run off and run a big election campaign. Then someone else will say, "Give me a couple of 100,000. I'm going to run off and do this court case," and then blah 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 blah. You understand me? There's no sense of purpose. There's no common goal here. Now, the other thing is this: the reason why I believe that is the case is because there are too many people inside the freedom movement who will not name the enemy. They won't call the enemy out, right? We've got some of them in the freedom movement which are saying, "Oh, it's the medical regulatory people, they're the enemy, APRA." Right? Others who are saying it's the health minister. Others are saying it's Scott Morrison. No, it's bloody someone else. Blah, 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 blah. But they won't call the enemy out. The enemy is a global syndicate, a global coalition of satanic forces, a global coalition of those people who take secret blood oaths to each other to keep each other's secrets, etc. And those people have infiltrated and are controlling all of our institutions, all of them bar none. Now, the freedom movement won't name our enemy, won't call the enemy out, won't call it out, won't say this is who we're at war against. They won't name the Khazarian mafia. They won't name them people. They won't name the central bankers. They won't name them. You got me. These are our enemy. These people are trying to enslave us. They're trying to murder us. Big Pharma, all this stuff. They won't name them, and we can't agree on what our commonality is, what our common sense of purpose is, what our common enemy is, what our claim is in victory. And that's a major problem. And that's why we're all walking around confused and aimlessly. I've run big trade union campaigns, mate. We've gone the knuckle. We've taken cops on, mate. We have smashed government, smashed these bastards. You understand? All these other piss ants out here, with their dyed hair and all their lovely peace act, they've done nothing. They've never run a campaign. They've never run a war. They've never, they've got very little skin in the game, and what I'm saying, you won't win a war like that. You won't win a war like that.
John, do you think the Australian people are at that point where they're going to stand up, like you mentioned, like the trade unionists of old would, and push back?
Yes.
We've seen, nearly 2 million people in Canberra. We've seen close to 1 million on the streets of Melbourne at different times. Probably 500,000 on the streets of Sydney. Violence has always been rejected by, just about everybody in the freedom movement. If we are relying on the Americans, or if you like, on the global alliance to get us out of this shit fight that we're in, wouldn't it be counterproductive for the people to rise up now and start pushing back in the manner that you sort of talked about?
Look. I'm not saying get violent and I've said earlier the victory to me is turn your back. It's all of Australia turn your back and refuse to comply, refuse to recognise, refuse to have anything to do with all of our institutions, right, as they stand, because they're all fake. They're all a fraud. They're all Freemason institutions, etc. And embrace the new opportunities as a free country that we are entitled to that are going to come our way. That's a victory in a war. A couple of years ago, had we had confronted these government militarized police with violence, they would have shot us en masse. They would have shot us en masse. They were all pumped up with crystal meth. Go and look at the eyes of those police officers in Melbourne who were shooting bullets, rubber bullets, and stun grenades, and hitting them with batons. Look at their eyes if you can get their sunglasses. Their biggest dinner plates, mate. Biggest dinner plates. All drug fucked, right? Okay.
Yep.
Had we had triggered them in a major way, they would have shot us en masse.
I agree.
We don't need to lose. Don't use violence. Don't.
No. And we shouldn't need to. The plan apparently is rolling out nicely. The war's been going on for 6 years without us knowing anything about it. We needn't sweep in now and think we're going to win it. There is other plans afoot, and that's why I think there is so much military action happening around our shorelines and in our skies at the moment too, without getting into the whole weather manipulation argument. That's a story for a whole other day. John, we've been going a while. I have starred a few comments, so let me just go back and see if there's a few here relevant to stuff you were talking about. There's a few more that are relevant to stuff we were sort of talking about earlier. So, Alan, I think we spoke about the warships around Australia. I hope you got that earlier. That was pretty easy to do. Paul, yes, we are, I think, part of America at the moment. If not the 51st state, then certainly part of the alliance and probably termed a US protectorate. But after what Alexander Downer did, which I explained, at least in part the other night, we're very definitely, I think, owned by America these days. Queensland stealing children from homeless parents at the moment. Now, I did hear of this the other day. Now, you live along the river, John. You probably get to see more than your fair share of people sleeping in cars and sleeping rough every night along the river. In Brisbane, I know that there are probably 2,500 people sleeping rough on the Sunshine Coast, and probably more than that on the Gold Coast and out into the hinterland there. I had heard that the child stealers were in action, particularly if it was difficult for parents to keep the kids showered and bathed on a daily basis. They get them to school okay, but what happens? The teacher dobs them in and rings up special services. The child stealers get involved, and you find yourself in all sorts of trouble. That's got to end too, and that's got to end, real soon, like now. I don't know.
The trafficking in our kids, mate. The Child Protective Services, the government authorities are one of the biggest child trafficking, pieces of infrastructure anywhere. In the US, mate, they specialise in separating vulnerable children from their mothers and fathers, and then exploiting them, putting them into the trafficking business. It's the same in Australia. Low-level child protection people probably wouldn't know, but the organisation itself, absolutely. These people are horrendous, mate. Horrendous. They are child trafficking. We've got, non-for-profits, government departments, and so on, all meant to protect children, which are all in the business of exploiting children, right? This is evil shit, mate. I've never used, until about 6 years ago, I never used the word evil, right? Never. But in the past 6-7 years, I can't stop using the word evil because there's no other way of describing these freaks. You know?
100% right. And the depth of the evil is what staggers me. It's just, unfathomable. Every time you think we've reached the bottom, you hear about something else, and it's just a level again. Oh God. Why are all the CFMEU guys coming from around Australia to Victoria to help dictator Dan? I saw a video the other day. It was at a union, what do they call them? A tool meeting or shop meeting or wherever, workshop meeting, where the union organizer came in. He had been at a meeting where Dan, the man, had been there himself, spoken for an hour, tried to beef up his support for the unions. The message came back, and you could tell this union rep was a little bit mousy when he was saying it. Look, we all, you're all allowed to have your own opinion of Dan, and whether he's in and out. But the powers that be need a Labor government in. So put your feelings aside for Dan, and make sure that you vote for your job. He used a huge, great, long list.
Yeah, this is the insiders, mate. You've got an inner circle inside of the CFMEU. These are the shop stewards. These are the loyalists, right? They do not reflect whatsoever the broader membership of the CFMEU. They just don't, right? And these villains, right? These traitorous villains, right, who would sell their fellow union member out, and they have, and they will, right? These are the people that are being coalesced and brought together to run these bullshit protests about, hands off my job and shit like that, as well as the political shit, right? It's shut your mouth. We know all that, but shut your mouth. There's a deal in place, and if you do shut your mouth, you'll have a well-paying construction job for the next few years. If you don't, you'll be out in your ass like all those others, right, who didn't want the jab, etc., and you'll never work here again. Now, that's the message. When I look, the word blacklist, right, blacklist or black ban, cancel is the new word, but it's all the old. It's an old communist trick, right? If you want to really screw someone up, right, blacklist them from being able to work, right? And it doesn't matter whether there's a writer or a film director or a construction worker, whatever. If you're blacklisted and you can't work and you're isolated until the day you die, right, you're silenced. And these people work very heavily on the blacklist, right? I fought a lot against all this when I was in the unions, right? Wouldn't tolerate the blacklist, but they've mastered it all. The whole cancel culture came out of and was born out of the union blacklist. The same as the government forced vaccinations, right? It's for your health and safety, right? Is a union creation, right? Union creation. Because if you go on the building industry, they'll say, if something's unsafe, we've got to shut the job down because everyone's unsafe. You know what I mean? But that's how they get the argument. It's for your safety. It's for your safety. That's all a communist union mantra. That's where they got all this shit. Now Dan Andrews has no support, none, in amongst ordinary CFMEU people. Those even if there's a job and a career there that someone will be, they're only glued to him, right? Because they'll personally benefit. There's no loyalty there with these people, right? None whatsoever. Dan Andrews is a pissant, mate. He is a insignificant pissant. You've got to look who pulls his strings, and it's John Setka, it's the Chinese, it's the United States, Joe Biden's and Hillary Clinton's and these people, right? They're the ones that pull his strings. Dan Andrews in his own right, mate, is just a nobody. Nobody.
Yeah. Yep, you're 100% on the money there, mate. 100% on the money. Look, John, I can't thank you enough for coming on tonight. I'd love to have you on a bit more regularly if you want to come on and have a chat. I've got 2 channels where you can say whatever you like, and we won't get kicked off. The YouTube thing, well, I don't do it for the money. Not that there is any money for me coming out of YouTube, not in any great number, I can tell you. But it does seem to get the largest amount of reach to people. And for me, this is about reaching people and getting the message out.
Yeah.
And I would love to introduce you to my place. I think you could become a speaker on a little tour that we can put together around my places. And if you're up for it, mate, we might take you out of the boat and take you on the land for a little tour and get you speaking. We'd love to have you come on board.
Look, I'm happy to help, mate. I'm happy to help. As I've said, everything I do, I don't want donations. I'm not trying to sell anybody anything. I don't want anything of anyone, right? I'm in the leave me the fuck alone party, you know. So I don't want anything of anyone. But at the same time, there is very few people, if not nobody. There's now nobody left alive that has my pedigree, right? That has my communist trade union sort of historical pedigree. No one else. And I feel obligated to make a contribution as much as I'm able to seize our freedom back. So I'm happy to help, Carl. Let me know. I'll do everything within my abilities to participate and engage with you and your audience. You've got a great audience. I haven't watched a lot of your work, but I've watched a bit this afternoon. You've got a great audience. You've got good people, and I'm happy to participate in that. Let me know when you want me, and I'll come back.
Absolutely. Well, don't know what you're doing for the next week, but I'm driving to Harvey Bay on Saturday to do a show on Sunday. Well, it may not be a show, actually. We're just doing a talk in a park. And then going to Rockhampton, Mackay, and Townsville after that. So if you're up for a week away from home, mate, I'll take you on the road next week. We can make a fun week out of it.
Well, it's hard to get me off the boat, mate. I mean, I love this lot. But look, we'll talk off camera. We'll talk off camera. Yeah. We'll see what
no worries at all.
All right, Carl. Do you need me any further?
Yes, mate. No, mate, thank you very much for your involvement tonight. You've been wonderful, and I know the audience is just blown away to be able to have access to you. I was told when I put out a message earlier today that you were going to be on, I started getting a whole heap of text messages of people saying, "Oh, wonderful! Oh, great! Can't wait to see John on." And you know, he's always got something great to say, and you have. It's been a very enlightening evening, mate. I can't wait to sit down with you again and have another chat. Maybe I'll come on the boat and record it next time with the cameras. And
come and do one on the boat, mate. I can tell you. Come and do one on the boat. You'll love it, mate. I've been doing this for 7 years on the boat, and it's a great life. I mean, people bitch about all this, all of this Admiralty law and all this sort. Well, I mean, that's all I know. I mean, I live on a boat. It's all I know is maritime law, So
Well, you're well versed in it, I would imagine. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, I don't step on land much. I just don't step on land much, mate. I live on a boat and I travel around and all this. I don't drive much on land. But look, drop in, see me, catch up. Anything I can do to help. You go up and do this stuff up in North Queensland, mate. You badly need it up there. And if I can help, I certainly will.
Love to have you on board again, John. Thanks very much for your time tonight. Cheers.
Okay, thanks again.
Thank you very much. John Wilson, direct from the boat. What a bloody great chat. And I think we could probably go on for hours and hours and hours, but I don't want to hang you up too much. It is a school night after all. Thank you very much to everybody who's put a few comments in. Chaos, 28 tons on a passenger jet. You don't think so? 757 carries 28 tons of cargo. Maybe... Pardon me, it wasn't all gold, I'll admit that. But 787s, 757s carry 28 tons of cargo. A very large amount of that cargo on that plane was gold. It was America trying to buy back Chinese debt, but that's a whole other story for another night. This one, Australia as a nation committed treason against the Commonwealth and sedition against the people of America. That's exactly right. That is why we have become, if you like, the 51st state of America, because Alexander Downer, in league with the UK's MI5 and MI6, helped formulate what is colloquially known as the Steele dossier. We all know how much truth was put into that. that is a treasonous and seditious thing to be doing. So you can thank the fishnet wearing little Pompous Pratt from Adelaide for that one. Well, they say Adelaide seems to grow Pompous Pratts. Christopher Pine's from there too, isn't he? If there were white hats, they wouldn't be letting people, and especially kids, being poisoned daily, continuously. The white hats are not the ones that are letting children be poisoned. It's their parents. The white hats are not responsible for any of that. And if there wasn't some event like this to try and wake people up, something cataclysmic, how do you think they would be able to wake people up? It's an awful way of doing things, but it is a war. People die. And at the end of the day, taking the jab is a choice. Now, it's not necessarily the choice for the children. That's being forced on them, and parents are making that choice through bad advice and through medical advice that is, well, not truly honest. Now, the plan is next Tuesday, I'm going to have Julian Gillespie on, but he can only do my show pre-recorded. I've got to record him very early in the morning. But Julian is leading the charge when it comes to trying to protect our children, and is putting a case to the High Court to stop mandatory jabs of our kids. It's a very important message and a very important program. I'm looking forward to sitting down with Julian Gillespie. I've got it pre-recorded, as I say, very early in the morning, and it'll be a replay, aiming for that to be available on Tuesday, because Tuesday night we're going to be in Rockhampton doing a live show. So we'll be on from about 7 o'clock local time, 6:30 maybe, but 7 o'clock local time. That'll make it 8 o'clock just about everywhere else. And a little later, but we're trying to accommodate meals and people coming to pubs and all sorts of stuff. So the Julian Gillespie one, I hope, will be up on Tuesday. I've got to record him very early in the morning, and then I'll be able to upload. Then hopefully get our show together for Tuesday night. That'll be pretty spectacular. Might have something else to talk about on the back of that if you want to. And yes, Harvey Bay. I got a message from Di. I'll have to give her a call. Yes, we will be there Sunday, coming up on Saturday, and I think 10 a.m. at the park, where everybody else goes and has a bit of a chat. So we're going to have a bit of a chat. That might limit what I can do by way of live streaming, folks, from Harvey Bay on Sunday morning. But I believe it's 10 a.m. Sunday morning at the park, where there's a sound shelf, something like that, or a stage. Pier Park, I want to say. If not, get a hold of the Pier Group or Di at the Pier House, and she will give you all of those details. Cherie might also have them available at Cherie at vofhq.com.au. No.au, just .com. Getting tired. Thank you again to everybody who's participated tonight. Really appreciate you coming in and giving us your feedback. I keep saying the voice of freedom is your voice. I just happen to be the one who sits here every night and talks. But your comments mean a lot to me. So if you are going to leave comments on YouTube, I've decided that I'm going to start screenshotting some good ones, or good and bad ones. I'm up for criticism too. Just if you are going to be someone who criticizes, I'm all up for criticism, but don't be a troll. Have some genuine criticism, that's great, but don't be a troll. I'm not going to be bothered with trolls. Just, I don't know, call it 40 years of media experience. Never bothered with you before. I'm not about to start now. So the trolls can go off and have a lovely night. Thank you, Julie. Appreciate that. Thank you to Paul and to Sunflower, who gave us some stickers tonight. Really appreciate that, folks. We are, doing this on your money at the end of the day. So I will only do this as long as the people want me to do this. If I can't afford to get somewhere, if I can't afford to pay for the fuel to get somewhere, then we won't be going there. It's just that simple. If I can't afford to, look after the Galactic Larrikins who will come along and help me out with some new stuff next year, then, it's difficult for us to get there. So it is only with your support that we are going to make this happen. But our aim is to build a family, not a Voice of Freedom family, not a My Place family, but a sort of a combined my Voice of Freedom family. How's that sound? Place. Should add that at the end. At any rate, my place at your place is going to be a thing next year, and we're looking forward to bringing the show to your place. We will have some opportunities where you might be able to come and help us out, but it won't be helping us out because you want to help us out. It'll be helping us out because we can help you out too. So I'm looking forward to sitting down with the Galactic Larrikins over Christmas, New Year. We're going to work out a few new little plans and hopefully have some big announcements for you in January with our first plan there. And part of that will be coming back through Victoria and heading to South Australia. Going to go and do a little run in that direction. There is a lot of talk about going to Western Australia. We would really love to come to WA, worried about getting arrested at the border or when we get off the plane, whichever way it works out that we come. I would prefer to drive. I quite like the idea of driving, but it's a bloody expensive drive in 3 vehicles across Australia from Brisbane and or Canberra to Perth and places far beyond. So the only way we will get that happening, folks, is by donations. So you can donate, stickers if you like, or if you don't want to do that, you can go to the vofhq.com website. There's a donate button there, and thank you for helping every bit that you can. I am doing the odd little bit of voice work and reading the odd ad, so I do contribute too, I promise. But for other reasons in other videos you can find out about, we don't do a great deal of stuff around that too much anymore because they don't pay any money anymore. It's just quite sad, really. So thank you to everybody who's thrown up some suggestions here. Katrina, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Love you guys too. In fact, I couldn't do it without your love at the end of the day. And part of the reason I love being on the road so much is because I get to meet so many of you. And it's so hard to describe for me the feeling of family that I get, particularly when I go to my place or a small country town or even a middle-sized country town. The feeling of love, the feeling of loss that many of those people have experienced is life-changing for me. I didn't live through what the people in Victoria lived through. They had a completely different experience, and it was a very traumatic one. And I can't help feeling that more needs to be done. And hopefully this weekend everything is being done to put Victoria back on the path to recovery. By kicking out Dan Andrews and kicking out the Labor government. I don't know that getting a Liberal government's going to help you anymore, but let's see whether or not it can change. I have a sneaking suspicion somewhere in the back of my mind. I think Victoria is a trigger. I do think that the fix is in Victoria. I think the fix has been in Victoria for years. I think they're too stupid to know they should pull the fix or too deep into the fix to be able to pull it and conceivably have any chance of winning the election. So they know by pulling the fix, they're definitely out. So they're going to stick with it and hope they get away with it one more time. Will they get away with it one more time? That same monitoring that's been in place for the last 6 and maybe closer to 10 years or possibly longer, that election monitoring in America, that's been worldwide. That hasn't just been American elections. That's been American, British, French, Spanish, German, you name it. Those elections have all been monitored for corruption, for fraud, for cheating. I think Victoria might be the catalyst of exposure for it to begin. And if they can prove that there was fraud in Victoria and that the same conditions existed during our last federal election, putting aside for one moment the fact that there was no actual election writ issued, certainly not a real one, nothing that was signed under the Great Seal, and nothing signed by the Governor-General, certainly witnessed by the Governor-General, but not signed by him. So that will prove that our last federal election was illegitimate as well. This is going to make a lot of Australians wake up and think, particularly if they provide the electronic proof of the vote rigging that we suspect will be happening in Victoria. If you are in Victoria and you're voting this weekend, do the right thing. If you hate government, if you hate all government, vote for an independent in your area. If you can't vote for an independent in your area, vote for the party that's going to do the least amount of damage and not going to give their votes, their preference votes, to Dan Andrews. That's what you have to avoid. You have to avoid voting for any party that is, any minor party that is going to preference Dan Andrews and Labor. That's the big thing to watch out for in Victoria. And for the first time for many people, I'm sure you're really going to have to think about how you vote. I'm not familiar with how they're laying it out in Victoria on the vote cards exactly, so I can't give you an instruction on what maybe you should do. But there'll be plenty of people, I'm sure, in Victoria who will tell you, go to a My Place and get some advice there. And if you happen to be in Frankston, then Darren Bergwerf is doing some big electioneering this week in Frankston. He might even have a special guest there helping him out later in the week. So keep an eye out. I think Friday night, always a good night, social night at My Place Frankston, the night before the Victorian state election. If you are in Victoria and you're a fan of a good night out and potentially some pretty good speeches, I'd be going along to My Place Frankston this week. Just saying. Friday's a good day. Saturday's not a bad day either, but I'd go in the morning. Just saying. What else can I tell you about? We did touch on the uniforms and the number of personnel going into hotels and apartment buildings in Australia at the moment and being sort of rotated through. I did see somebody say there's a lot of UN in Australia. Yeah, different blue. This is a very different blue uniform. And like I say, more in line with the kind of blues that you see US Navy wearing. So keep an eye out too, folks, if you are around the water's edge, particularly in some of Australia's bigger harbours. Want to know about any military activity at all. You get boats coming in, you get boats coming out. It seems to be happening at night a lot. So you can understand why they would do that. That's to keep people like you from seeing what's going on and telling people like me. But if you're a night owl and you happen to be overlooking the harbour, can I tell you that there is some very interesting photo processing things available where you could take a photo in the pitch black with your phone and run it through this processor and it'll come up like daylight. So you'll be able to see exactly what you're taking photos of. Give it a look. If you're around the harbours, if you're around the bays where we might find military ships, I'm very interested to learn where they are. And if you're seeing them anywhere, folks, around the place, then please let me know. Want to know what states they're in and what sort of numbers. We have some idea of why we think they're there, but I won't go into that just yet. Eliza, thank you very much for your sticker. Really appreciate that. And J11 is back again. Thank you so much for your donation too. All this goes a long way. Well, there you go. That's almost half a tank of fuel just in those two. So I really appreciate it, folks. Tank of fuel gets us to Rockhampton. Yay. Well, we definitely will be in Harvey Bay Sunday. And there is a gentleman coming with me on this run. I know I invited John, but if you are interested in learning more about the finance side of what's going on in the world, and more particularly how you've been rorted for so many years, then I'll have a gentleman with me who will get up and have a bit of a chat before the show every night and give you a bit of an idea on the finance side of things. His name is Len. Wonderful. He's a Vietnam veteran, and he's done all sorts of things in his life, from driving trucks to driving planes to wandering around courtrooms. So Len's going to tell us his story across the course of the week as we travel our way north in far north Queensland. I haven't got venues because I didn't check the email or write them down. Haven't got venues yet, except for Harvey Bay on Sunday, 10 a.m. And that is at the Sound Shell. Then we're going to Rockhampton. That'll be Tuesday night. And it'll be a pub somewhere. Can't think of it. Mackay will be Thursday night. And then Townsville will be Saturday, the 3rd of December. In the evening there. Townsville, you've got a My Place you're getting ready to put together. Peter Newey's going great guns up there getting that sorted. Really looking forward to having Pete on for a bit of a chat. And he's got a lot of very interesting things to tell us about Townsville. But we're going to predominantly talk about My Place. And Darren Bergworth will join us live from, I think, Mildura, where he will be opening a My Place there. My Place is bigger than 10 dancing bears, folks. Not that they're probably the right kind of thing to be dancing these days. It's okay if you take the muzzle off. But a lot of things happening with My Place. And next year, we're hoping to make My Place at Your Place a really, really big thing. So we'll only be able to do that with your support. And that can start. Oh, now, T-shirts. I am just about to sign up a deal where we will be able to put out some T-shirts. Now, have I got a T-shirt design here I can show you? No, I don't. I will have in the coming days. I will show you a couple of our new designs. We have a new Knight, which you may have seen floating around from time to time. I have put him up on a couple of other chats, probably in Magna Carta chats. But those shirts will be available to order through the website. I'm hoping before the end of this weekend. I've just got to get all the graphics sorted and sign a piece of paper, apparently. So we'll get it all sorted. Looking forward to that. And thank you for your support. If you're looking forward to buying a T-shirt, I can tell you those Magna Carta ones are hot. They look bloody awesome. And might have some news from the Galactic Larrikins and ourselves going forward about some further T-shirts. But that'll be potentially Friday night in our Friday night free-for-all. And also next week, Cass Smith, going to catch up with Cass and have a bit of a chat with her. That might also actually be Tuesday night, now that I think about it, in Rockhampton. So if you want to get a bit of an idea about gold, silver, self-managed super funds, and what works best for you, should you leave money in cash? Should you leave money in big super? Should you get it all out and turn it into gold and bury it in the backyard? What are the downfalls of burying it in the backyard? There are pitfalls to that sort of thing. So Cass will be in to discuss that with us next Tuesday night. And as I say, during the day on Tuesday, I'll be speaking with Julian Gillespie, and I will upload that to probably just the Nun 2K channel. Oh, no, I might be able to stream it out. So it might go to all of them. I've just got to figure out the right way of doing it. We will organise it regardless, and very, very much looking forward to Julian Gillespie's chat. And Cass back, silver, gold, lovely lady, all the beautiful things. Should probably have a glass of wine. Speaking of a glass of wine, I saw John having a glass of wine, so I brought a scotch in for a drink, but forgot to open it. Bloody idiot. All right, it's an hour and a half. I've talked enough, and tonight, as per one of the comments I received during the week, you just love it when I say goodnight and I keep talking for another hour. Not going to do that tonight. Not going to do that tonight at all. Okay, that's a public servant chat. Seeing if there's any questions there. Hey, Paul. Thanks, Paul. Appreciate it, mate. Really appreciate it. That's very generous of you. I thank you all for anything that you do. Google and these sorts of things, this sticker thing, it's very handy when it turns up. They do tend to take a little while to pay, but that's just Google. God love them. Just having a bit of a glance down for any questions. T-shirts, sorry. Yes, so hopefully I'll have all that up by the end of the weekend. If Laura gets involved, it'll hopefully have it a bit sooner. There's a good question from Sunflower. Will I do lives on Rumble? Yes, I will. I'm just trying to develop how and what. I know how, but what I'm going to do and how it's going to be different. That's sort of what I'm trying to figure out at the moment. But yes, I will do things different on Rumble and on Project Matilda. We will stream simultaneously to both because both are protected, if you like, protected from having your speech removed. So, yeah, we're just formulating a couple of different ideas for things like that. And you will find with the Galactic Larrikins and I coming together a bit more, we're going to develop another show which will probably go on to just those two platforms as well. So what we'll do is use YouTube to try and, let you know that something's happening if you're not a member of Rumble or if you're not a Project Matilda fan, but you follow Voice of Freedom or the Galactic Larrikins on YouTube. We'll do some shorts or we'll do something that will give you a bit of an idea of what we're going to talk about over on those other platforms that we're not going to get kicked off for. So that'll come your way. Absolutely. Definitely going to happen. Yes, good night, Paul. Everybody's saying good night, Paul. Black Sheep's on tonight. Black Sheep, got a surprise for you. It's more to do with something you'll watch rather than you'll do, but don't get too excited yet. Yes, got a surprise for you coming up, preferably before the weekend. So that's my plan. I've got to do a bit more editing, but oh, hang on, somebody's having a birthday. Jill says, Carl, can you please say happy birthday to my daughter tomorrow? She met me in Shepparton. Oh, yes. Okay. Well, Jill, I would love to say happy birthday to your sister whose birthday it is tomorrow, and she helped me carry my speaker to the car in Shepparton. Absolutely magnificent woman and quite strong. Very strong. At any rate, I thank you for not mentioning her name and helping me remember it and making me look really good because I could remember so many names. But at any rate, please pass on my best to her, and I hope she has a very, very happy day. Does that make her a Sagittarian? Are we into Sagittarius time yet? Got to be close. Sagittarians, folks, the best kind of people. Just a hint. Birthday's not coming yet. Not yet. A little while away. Definitely a Sagittarian, though. Definitely. Have yourself a lovely night, folks. I'm not going to talk anymore because I've bullshitted long enough for far too long. Have yourself a lovely night. And tomorrow, it is a free-for-all, if I'm right. Tomorrow's Friday. So it will be free-for-all. So tomorrow night, definitely going to have the Galactic Larrikin, well, at least one of them on. We will also have a couple of other interesting surprises tomorrow night, including one Sean Ambrose, who will take us through his latest Scotch invention or whiskey invention, and Patriot 101. Glenn's back. We will talk all things Intel. So that's tomorrow night on the Friday Free for All, and I really look forward to having your company then. As always, folks, stay safe if you are out working hard, or particularly if you are on the roads. There are plenty of dickheads. Please do not be one.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!